Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming. I see that the room next door is full, and that's why you came here. As it's been said, I work in the Joint Command of Cyber Defense, as it's shown to the left and to the right. This is the group I belong to, Digital Investigation. We basically do forensics, basically Windows and malware analysis. We also deal with mobile devices, forensic and other devices that may come along. Today's introduction deals with forensic developments in Windows 10, which are not all that well documented. Microsoft works on a black box approach with their system, and you have to go on your own to be able to make the presentation like today's, but it's basically for our day-to-day work. How many of you have done forensic investigation? Okay, quite a lot. So you know what I'm talking about. We might see that the system we have to analyze is the victim, that is, they've intruded in, or something has happened that was not done by the user, correctly done by the user, or the other way around. Perhaps what we're seeing is a team in which, or the piece of equipment in which the user has manipulated in a malicious way, be it to commit a crime, or for instance a pederast or whatever. So these are from different periods because the forensic will be very useful to know what they have to do if it's a compromised computer or the computer is being used to do something illegal. And then it depends on the environment as well. We can be forensic for the corporate environment. In my case, we're talking about our own computers of our own network where you have administrator privileges where you can access remotely and get the evidence remotely. In our case, users usually collaborate when there is an investigation. In 95% of cases, the computers have been infected, so you have to analyze them. Whereas in those where there is a court order, it tends to be the other way around. There is an investigation in progress, and the electronic devices are part of the investigation of a crime. And in those cases, the users will refuse to declare and use the right to remain silent, and they will not help out. So the type of investigation gets complicated in a different way. And then sometimes somebody comes along and the computer is from a friend that's given it to me so that you can remove the password and be able to access to it. So, as I was saying, the type of user that's been working with the computer makes a big difference. Most users, unfortunately, are natives without the digital. They use the computer without much knowledge, and in a way, they make investigation easier for people who are doing the court investigations because they are not aware of how much window logs in the use of a computer, so you can get a lot of evidence, or they are sort of careless and they open an email with a phishing attack. So in both cases, to generate the evidence, because they have done a lot of things without cleaning up after the fact, the forensic will find it's an easy job. It's easy to find information about what happened. Then we have the brother-in-law level. Here, also known as Juanker, the corporate user who wants to use their repository to look at films, or they want to set up a VPN to view films, and the problem with this type of people is that they've read a lot of anti-forensic techniques, and in many cases they are going to apply part of the techniques, of course, because they've only read about part of the commands, not all of them, because reading is painful. The investigation can take a bit longer, but you can still get stuff. And then there is the legend level. They have a boot camp to start up the machine, because otherwise they cannot work. So in these cases and in the prior ones, they use Guerra and other things, and FireEye has produced or issued the Commando VM, which is a virtual environment for PCs, but which is another way of doing, in the Windows environment, is another way of doing pen testing, and you could use it to analyze a Windows machine with penetration capacity. When it comes to collecting evidence, because sometimes you have to go and collect the evidence, it doesn't always come to you. You can find the system on and without blocking, and that's great because you can do plenty of things live. You can record in video while you're doing stuff. You avoid many problems that the operating systems may have in terms of security. You have access to everything and the credentials to connect the cloud. If they're in the system, you can see where they're surfing, and that's the ideal case. And then you can do a crash up and take a copy of the disk to your home. So that's the great way to get the most of the situation. If it's on, but it's blocked, then we start finding problems. There have been times in history where there have been magic devices to do aggressive pen testing. You could have blocked screens, jump them over, and access the system. But usually, if it's a user of the corporation and they've done nothing wrong, then they will allow you to deblock the system. But when the user does not want to collaborate, then we're in trouble. As of today, Microsoft has incorporated Windows Hello biometric measures to block the system, and like in many cases, they will present things of how to do a bypass of Windows Hello, be it digital prints or facial print, but you're not in the right environment that people use for the demos. If the computer is off and not ciphered, you got there with your cloner and you took the clone to your lab, but most people have learned, unfortunately, a bit about cybersecurity, and they cipher the hard disk. But if you take that copy, then you cannot analyze anything because you're not going to be able to do so. There are also different levels of depth to do forensics. Some people say they do forensics, but they actually do quite superficial stuff, and they have like a big bottom tool. They index everything in that tool. If it's a paying tool, they get more out than in a free one, but that's all. Unfortunately, there are many things that you do have to analyze deeper down if you really want to do an investigation, particularly with the analysis of malware, because there's a topic of documents, and you want to know what the sample is, or like when tools are not included within the forensics suite, you have to do it by hand to see how the tool works to be able to patch the artifacts.
And usually our team will be made up by a mix of hardware and software, cloners, or a external USB with a cane to do disk cloning, destination hard drives, rotated drives, maybe a tab to get network traffic, dongle Wi-Fi to see whether there are Wi-Fi's in the area, or whether there's any lateral sending of or leak of information, as well as a forensic workstation in your lab to index the evidence quickly and work well. Regarding software, if you're doing live forensics, it's good to have internal CSIs, Needlesoft, and there are some cool tools for events, system artifacts, and the community is quite large. In GitHub there are many tools, here are just a few. Reaper for registry, with many plugins for specific matters. Cyberman has just launched Cape, which is a compilation of their tools. DBS team for maldogs analysis and malware forensics. And then Playing Card and Dinacto, which is a free forensic suite. WISA for network analysis, volatility for storage analysis. If you've done forensics, you may know about most of them. We also have the possibility of having some bistro to get certain things with tools, network, forensic analysis. It depends on what you want to do, basically. And then commercially speaking, the forensic suites that may do many things and they implement loads of patches to assess the specific artifacts of many applications. And an essential tool that some people don't like is Microsoft Excel. When you're assessing files, massive files of an NFT, and you might need a massive spreadsheet, and then Google is always useful when you find something unusual. And it's always good to check and to ask what may be used by this. So here at a Juanco level, they get a sample, they upload it on the internet, and if you're a malware analyst, you need to upload the sample hashtag. Otherwise, you're telling whoever began a campaign against you that you got them. And then you need to get money for training and endless time to get trained on your own, to self-training. There's a lot of information on the internet. We need to have the ability to get trained in a short period of time, and then regarding certifying information, if you're going to go to a court, the credentials you present before the judge give you a bit of prestige when it comes to presenting a forensic statement. And size does matter. Why? Because most computers in the world do use Windows. So it is very likely that if you get a computer in your lab, it will probably have Windows. Nowadays, the scenario, because here we're talking about computers, and most part of people's digital lives is done in their card or their mobile. So to have iOS or Android forensic capabilities, that's why we're focusing on computers here. So here Windows 10 is taking 10% of the market share of operating systems. It renders interest for forensic analysts to update the knowledge regarding what's new in Windows 10. And what's the problem with Windows 10? Well, Microsoft decided not to change the name of the operating systems again. And we've been with Windows 10 since July 2015. We're nearly in April 2019, and nearly after 4 years we have many intermediate versions. Here are just main reviews. In April we'll have 1903, the new review, with new events and forensic artifacts, and those events are not here. In the last few months, through Windows Insider, the new novelties have been assessed regarding what might be new, but Microsoft has a bad habit of touching things that you knew before, so you need to validate your knowledge that those things are still applied in the current Windows analysis when you do forensic analysis. So we cannot assume things if we haven't correlated that what we guess happened with the version we used to work with is also happening with the version with which you assess the system. Regarding the Windows versions, we have all these editions. There are more actually, up to 13 different versions. The main ones in the business environment are Enterprise, Pro. We may also find Windows to Go. If you don't know about it, you may have a magic USB working with all Windows. And that could be the system you need to assess to know its particularities. There are versions of 32 and 64 bits, modify the type of applications being installed, how they behave, mainly malware, and Windows Insider is a good source to try to learn beforehand on the new forensic artifacts you're going to find. And then Windows says are the ones with reduced systems. The name has changed this month. And there's going to be an S mode for each edition. I think they're just about to announce it in some Microsoft event. And as I was saying, it works like a black box. And every 6 months we have new artifacts, approximately. And surprise, every time there's a major update, it's like updating the operating system from scratch. It kills the installation date of the system, so that was the evidence to know whether a computer had been working for a while. So that disappears and eliminates all the events on the system that were stored. It just kills them. So your forensic analysis window is just about 6 months, which is a problem when you want to determine how long an intrusion has been in the system. And we try a lot to have tools developed by people, even from the community, to pass these events. Most people are like little leeches, expecting people to post on GitHub automated tools. Otherwise, we need to do it manually. How can you do an event modification generating system manually? Well, you can use tools such as Redshot, generating differentials in the Windows registry, and you can look at the ratio keys, and you may use tools such as Tripwire that shows you the file differential, and you can see the number of folders that affect the characteristics of Windows. And you can actually characterize the system, and you can keep trying with different systems and configurations to get an idea of how a new Windows characteristic works. You present it in a paper, and then you can come to Rooted conference. The problems we often find as forensics is anti-forensics, where people who have advanced knowledge try to destroy the evidence, as it happens with digital crime. From a machine, and we don't need to put this in microwave, but we have a denture here hiding a USB to hide information, and who take a denture in a glass of water or a USB killer. You may find someone that may know that at some point they might go into their home to get evidence, and instead of the evidence saying, hey, I'm the USB killer, do not get it, the version here, you plug it in your forensic system, and you just kill a cloner that was 2,500 euros, and it's hard to take the evidence from the home. So you can find all sorts of things here. So you need to be careful when it comes to identifying the devices you need to get. Besides, the attackers, as the colleague was saying in the former presentation, may be manipulating logs or doing tricks for the log to break or the parser not to read it. We need to modify that. We can also apply scenography to add information or information ciphering in the disk and the communications. There are many tricks that may be applied to make life more difficult from the forensic perspective. One of the main ones is the evidence saturation. As a forensic expert, you may find that you need results as soon as possible. You need to assess tons of logs to solve a case. So time and the human capability is limited, and even though you may use tools to simplify your life, if you get a block of 20 or CDs to assess all the pictures, you either select the events, or if you have 100 infected computers on a network, you either use a tool to duplicate things, and you assess one or two computers, determining that they're all infected with the same thing, or eventually you're just going to be killed with the whole subject. And many people here are experienced, so I'm gonna go quickly on this because we don't need to talk about the file system. And Windows, as you know, works with NTFS, and the main evidence here is MFT that refers to everything that is happening in the system. The system works with generally registering everything that happens, and forensically speaking, that is one of the first things we need to assess. There have been changes in the current versions of the system, but these aren't things that we need to explain. However, as highlighted here in yellow, it's quite interesting and important, so please remember this. Until recently, most disks were formatted with 512 byte sectors. Right now, all disks from 6 terabytes or marked disks are formatted with 4K sectors, and if you don't take that into account when it comes to passing the hard drive, you cannot get good evidence. And we need to highlight this regarding the new things we have with the new system. So in ADS we can find a lot of malware things that may be hidden there. We also have the volume shadow copies, and the analyst here needs to try to get information, even though most attackers will try to get there so that you don't get information. In fact, WannaCry killed a part of the volume shadow copies, and the operating systems of 64 bits includes compatibility subsystems for the right functioning of 32-bit application, and you might need 32-bit machines to work well with this. And without cache, there is a little problem. The header in Windows 10 is 48 bytes long, and here you need tools that get updated with the parsing uncached with Windows 10. So you need to look in the tool developers for the updated ones. The developer 2 or 3 years ago has stopped advancing with the tool, and the last one they pass is Windows 7. So I wouldn't recommend using Windows 7 tools on Windows 10 because some things may be similar, some but not. There may be errors in the usage of incorrect tools. On Windows Explorer, we have the helper objects, and in Microsoft Edge browser on Windows 10 you won't have those objects, and that execution capability in some samples may be avoided because there's no persistence in that regard. Regarding Office, the new versions of Office 16 are quite interesting. Some people have these working on cloud. And if you have several devices, which is the aim of having the work on the cloud, you may find that when you open the device, just like magic, the Word or Excel application you use recommends that the first files to open the same ones you were manipulating on your other device. And that's because information goes through Microsoft servers, and the application is reading against those servers to obtain that information. Therefore, the new codes we get are these ones here, trans records, and that's the new registry code, where they're reading the system to know where they need to get those files recommended for the user. And each application has its own subkey, and this is new in the latest versions. And we can also show the use intention. We have the type URLs and type paths. This is a good way of detecting intentionality. And if you want to play forensics like masters at master level, you can integrate the transactional logs of the registry. This works like a database, and you have two files in the system working transactionally, text files, that upload information against the registry whenever there is a disk writing period in the registry. Sometimes the information is not uploaded in malware files, but if you assess those transactional elements in those subchains, you see malware.exe on a type of demo sample that left a trace in the transactional bit. Sometimes when you don't find anything, you should think disruptively to find a solution to the problem. Sometimes, in some places where you wouldn't waste your time as a forensic to look for evidence, sometimes it's worth to do it because it's the only way to find something. The Microsoft Store has changed between Windows 8 and Windows 10. The name has changed. They have their own evidence. It belongs to Windows 8, but in fact I have it here because it is still present in Windows 10. There have been few modifications. And when we work in the Teams, we have the SRD files in the second line. We can have access to that, and we have the full list of the system, of the application system that has been installed. In the classic control panel in Windows, you get a different thing than with the keyboard combination. The new combination shows you the ones installed and the ones downloaded from the Windows Store. But if you go to the former panel, the ones in the store are not shown. So you can get them by reading the file from the database or through PowerShell commands, so that the system will give you back information on the applications installed in the system. If the forensic is live and you can alter the system, you might need to do the script. take it to a text file as evidence, and if you can take it to that, you may be able to go to database and access it. So there are no big problems here. And the best possible scenario is to have a computer turned on without blocking, because you can do everything. You don't have a limitation to investigate. Okay, so we get to artifacts of Windows 10. The clipboard. And this evidence is quite new. It was included in the 1809 version. It's present since November 2018 in the operating system. And there are things that people wanted to have for many years, which is also have a clipboard storing different objects within the clipboard and not just one object in the storage. In this case, Microsoft answered the requests of the users, and this generates a list. It's a battery of objects. The last one is seen first. And you can ping, you can anchor objects or ping objects so that they cannot be moved. And you can have access to that. You can pick the copies. And as usual, these things may be a bit tricky. If you go to anchor element, oh, surprise! Next time you restart the computer, the object is still there because it is putting it on the disk, and later on I'll show you where the evidence is. It's on the clipboard file, folders are generated, and we have two folders here, it's relate and ping. And in ping we have all the pinned objects, the all generator code, and they get stored there, coded. And which other novelties is Microsoft include? Well, if you have several devices, people can synchronize them. So if the user sets that option, then we synchronize that amongst all the devices. And that allows to have lateral access to objects that may be in the clipboard. Let's say some company has a restrictive company for external connections, but the user uses these systems maliciously to filter information, and they copy objects. So there's a size limitation we have. 1024 bytes, I think, from the maximum object size. But you can also copy charts and screenshots to try to get information. And the best way of deciphering objects from the clipboard is either live, looking directly at the Windows plus V keyboard combination, or you can do it in a different way to look at the traces of the clipboard. And here you have your evidence. And here is a screenshot of how you see in the ping folder all the keywords generated, as well as the content of the JSON archives that the system uses to synchronize. And Microsoft loves that kind of files to synchronize objects to the cloud. So basically you find a text type string, the file names are on base64, so you call the name, and you'll always know that there is a local generated file, and when Microsoft thought of that name was because that could come from the cloud. So you see the local generation files, and you can decide forensically that, or see forensically that these files generated in this computer, not another. And then for graphic files, you get a bitmap with a JSON associated, and the hyperlinks may also be copy generating 4 files, 3 text files, and 1 HTML format new file. So internally, Microsoft keeps a way of signaling that it's a link. And we have the background activity moderator. This is another feature included from 1709, and is 1.5 year old. And this is a prefetch alternative. In the former slides, we saw that too. And prefetch allows you to know forensically whether an application has been executed in the system. So this feature is associated to 2 files, dang and bam, that work as system controllers, and there are 2 registry codes you need to pass. So you go to the sub-key of user settings, and here you have the information, and then you have the timestamps that you need to convert, because this is stored in Windows 64 in the date format, and you need to convert that into human normal format. And with that in an Excel file, you can see the evidence of what happened in the system thanks to this new forensic artifact that we have been able to locate. And sometimes the attacker did bother to erase the prefetch files to not leave evidence of a malicious sample, but they don't know that this exists, and they're leaving a trace elsewhere. That's what has to do with the restorative thinking we were mentioning earlier to do forensic analysis. And there is a small difference with the prefetch timestamps. We need to know this, because when it comes to doing a forensic analysis, we need not to have inconsistencies, because legally speaking, that could be a problem. So we need to know that there's a difference near a minute between the timestamps and the execution time, but if we use transactional logs, as we were saying earlier, that time difference is reduced to a second, so this is much more approximate regarding the execution time between prefetch and the BAM. Regarding timeline, this is another feature from version 18.03, just 1 year old now. It's very comfortable to have this kind of panel, where we have a summary of your activity. This is quite granular from the system. It gives you hourly navigation or browsing, latest activity, but as we all know, it looks more like an attempt to compile information, but it's not extremely useful. And we can also have access to this through keyboard combinations, and if the computer is unblocked, we should get Windows tab to try to assess what the user has seen. And all this goes to the disk, and we have a database like SQL Elite, and it's recommended to learn SQL Elite to do Windows 10 forensics. And we need to go to that activities cached.db and do the commands to get and process the evidence. And which tools are here in the information timeline? Well, right now, everything that pertains to Microsoft, all the information regarding Word documents, all that appears there as useful information to process, of course. And if someone applies anti-forensics and they do not know that they need to kill the activities cache file, you have yet another tool to work with there. And by the way, we need to clean the activity. If you clean the activity history from the system panel, does not eliminate the content stored in the activities cache.db file. It only cleans what is shown in the panel. So here is an example of the tables on that database. There are quite a few, many fields that may be storing information, and obviously we need to pass it after, but you may get a good idea of the information you may get if all fields are filled out. I don't know whether Alejandro Ramos is here today, but he has a tool called Recovers QLite, which is very interesting for these forensic artifacts. The lifetime of this evidence is 30 days, so we have a certain investigation window that is limited, and for browsing or criminal matters that might be enough, depending on when the crime got committed. But the limitation of the actual system is there. And we need to know about those limitations, because sometimes the log is cut off at a certain point. You need to know about the system parameters where we define these kind of things. We also have recent tabs, which is a registry key in the user data only for Windows 10 OS, and that gives a hierarchical structure of more events in the system. We have several keywords there, but from the forensics perspective, we need to be careful with the information we get, because we cannot conclude that the 10 weeks present determine the last files open with that application. So if that is your only hope to take it to court, okay, but if you can actually collect the evidence, as we've said before, please look at the rest of ways of obtaining evidence and check whether this information is valid, because it's not very precise. Microsoft uses it for user experience, but it's not a good forensic evidence that is 100% reliable. And I'm saying that because when people that do a counter evidence, if they know these things, they try to counterattack. They'll try to find your gaps, and this is one of them. And we have the PowerShell historical, many malware samples and administrators use PowerShell, especially in rogue cases. So here we go to this history kept in a text file, and from version 3 onwards we keep in 4096 commands in the system. So this basis is quite important for information regarding what may happen regarding recent information in the system. And there are also two separate histories, one for PowerShell and another one for PowerShell IEC, and they're kept independently in the system. So you should actually get both types of evidence. And here we have a history of the commands shown, execution date, and here you get an idea, quite a good idea, mainly when things happen, bad things happen regarding malware or malicious users. For the types of research, for document reading that may have been used with a computer, this type of evidence is not useful. Another new feature is the anti-malware scan interface, which is an OS tool for app developers, so they can use the APIs and get access to information. And from the forensics perspective, we should know that it allows us to scan files, memory or strings, and this is yet another tool that is quite useful. And then we have the notification center. If you like Windows or you work usually with it, sometimes it can be more cumbersome than a good solution. It tells you when you get emails, the websites that tell you about whether you've had notifications in your system, and you just get bombarded. In the lower left side is this funny panel here with the messages. So here maybe at some point you don't have access to an email, but surprise, you may have access to the notification center, and then those emails were part of them, because those will register there and you don't need the access keyword or password to the email. So that's quite interesting for evidence. And we can also obtain evidence of tasks and calendar emails and Windows Defender messages. For example, if there has been a Windows Defender alert, it will appear there. And for calendar tasks and events, we may be able to show the intention of the user to carry out an action. And that's quite important legally.
There are tools that force us, that help us first in an automatic way. The warnings or the alerts, and this is a way of reading it. These are the register keys that control the configuration of the center, the route where the connected images are stored. Here you can see that there is a picture of the notification, and the system defines the route for this system key, so you can read the key, decodify, and access to the system file where you're storing the corroborated evidence. And the timestamps are important from the forensic viewpoint to know when things have happened and to have a proper timeline. Then we have the file where the notifications are stored. As we're working on this type of forensic, you can access the file directly. The first window versions work with a binary file called pp.dat, but since the 1607 they changed the database. They included the file SQLite, and they included what you can see in this slide, which with this SQLite tool you can parse it, so this is more work. It's harder to know what information you need rather than take everything. Cortana. These are the user attention agents that are being introduced all over the place. Some people find them useful from the viewpoint, from the forensic viewpoint. It is relatively important, and you will see why next. It integrates the user contacts within the tool. It takes a lot of information and collects a lot of user information, and in no way can be taken to third parties, and Microsoft says that's very clear. It's only there for Cortana and for forensics, and this is whoever is at the computer removes the sound, but nevertheless you get this message through the speakers. You get this Cortana fright saying, "Hi, I'm Cortana." So this is the compilation of information collected. As I was saying, even with the blocked screen, this is working. And there are people who believe this is a violation of privacy, but we suppose the system uses it sort of legitimately. So it's just information compilation. We have related artifacts. For instance, this database, Cortana Core DB, and we will have to limit ourselves to the framework area, because for whatever reason, Cortana stores which Wi-Fi you have connected through last time. I don't know why it keeps that information, but from the forensics viewpoint, it allows you to know when was the last time that you've connected with a computer to a Wi-Fi. If you're at home, that doesn't make much sense, but if you're talking about mobile computers, it helps to locate somebody, and then it saves the tasks that were defined, or which also defines intentionality in terms of the user. In the version 16.07, Microsoft, as I was saying, changed the system that Cortana was using, and since it's been sending everything to the cloud, so the information that you can get as from forensics is limited, but in prior versions you had more information, so you know which version you're working with to see if you have to waste time looking for that information or it's not worthwhile. About the microphone, it has some temporary files of zero, so it doesn't make sense to go to that. But if you manage to use to find the library that it's using, you could pick the data flow and try to use that to parse the information. OneDrive. We don't know what it is, or we all know what it is. It's one of the storage tools for information available for cloud. It's Microsoft's, and it's integrated in the system. They do not force you to use it, but it's all over the place so that you do. It's integrated with the Office ID, so it's very comfortable for the user to work with it, and therefore, as I was saying, native users in inverted commas are the ones that are going to use these solutions because it's easy to save there. So it's place where probably in terms of the documentary investigations, forensic investigation, there's probably a lot of information there. The problem with all of this information in cloud is that there are different types of ways of working in the cloud. You can work as a local copy, as a download, as on the first use, or to open it directly on cloud. So even if you see that it's in the list, it may happen that the file is not there. So if you do not have the credentials and the user is not collaborating, in that case you will not have access, and you're going to need a court order to demand access to that local account, and it's very difficult to get that information that way. So since the person using this type of cloud storage probably has other devices, be it a computer with a Mac or a mobile phone, perhaps it's easier to access that information from the other device. Or sometimes access the mobile phone from the computer. So this is by default saved in the OneDrive file of the user, and you can see, if you know how to configure the logs and what files to analyze, you can try to do an interpolation of the tool use, and knowing that that there is a frequent update of these files if a computer stops connecting at a point in time, and that's the working time of a person. You can define that person. That's good to make the temporary correlation when that person stops having the machine on, and if you correlate the other things that we've mentioned earlier on with Cortana and so on, you can say that somebody disappeared approximately around this time. And OneDrive per business, for some reason, it touches the heading of the files stored on the server side. So when you hash the local with server, they don't match, and that's it for that. The mail tool, and I'm almost done. This is the mail tool included by default for Microsoft since Windows 8. Since Windows 10, it's changed the way the tool works. A lot of people don't use it, but it's one more included in the system. And in Windows 8, they use the format ML to store the emails, and in 10, it uses HTML or other or TXT, and it uses a system with more sub files. 3 and 7 are the ones that are of interest for us. 0 is called Datos Windows Phone, and in a top computer, a tabletop computer, is not used. In the 3 and 7, we have the relevant information from the forensic viewpoint. It generates files with these characters. It's a bit of tiresome, but you can see how you can access information. And the files in 3 are the files HTML, and the 7 are annexes. And the database with this location is the one that makes the correlation between the evidence of the text emails and the annexes. And this database is easy to analyze. It's only 63 internal databases, so it's quite small. Each one has HTML tables, and you have to focus or the approach is in the right way, because usually when these databases, these 5 databases at the bottom are more than enough for the forensic analysis. You don't need to analyze the whole of the database, because with part of it you will probably have more than enough information. And that's all. I think I have not gone beyond my time. I want to thank you once more for coming, and for those of you who work in forensics, I hope you find it useful.